past 10 days or so since the decisive victory of President-elect Donald Trump, many on the left have been trying to figure out why Election Day didn't work out in their favor.
Somehow you also have to explain why the gender gap went down, why Kamala Harris did worse among women than Joe Biden did. Somehow you have to explain why Trump got more black voters than any Republican since Richard Nixon. Somehow you have to explain how he massively improved Republican standing among Hispanic voters.
Wow. Questions coming from every direction among the left. That was New York Times columnist David Brooks this past week on PBS NewsHour. And of course, there's the Democratic Party's loss of some of the younger voters, voters that normally support them. In fact, according to ABC News exit polling, voters between the ages of 18 to 29 shifted to Trump by 13 points in 2024 compared to 2020. That's huge. So what could be the explanation for all of this? Is it an easy one or a difficult one? Well, joining me now to discuss this is a political commentator, Kyle Campbell. She's the host of the podcast Politically Basic. Kyle, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you.
Hi, Jody. Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, it is our privilege. So let's start with the younger voters, Gen Z. What can you tell us about the trends, the shifts that took place, the surprises that came up on everybody's radar?
Absolutely.
What do you know?
They're giving us a lot of great data after this election, and I'm not sure it was so much a shift as an earthquake amongst Gen Z voters, and two very different campaigns who approached these voters completely differently. And it resulted in that deafening loss for Kamala Harris's campaign and the left. And really what we're seeing, in 2020, about 33% of young women voted for Trump. It was 40% this year in this election. 56% of young men voted for Trump. So we're seeing big numbers up on the board for him. And really, I think one of the biggest issues that helped Trump win and caused the Harris campaign to lose was that Trump went for these voters. He wanted to know, what are your real concerns? What are your daily struggles? And how can we craft policy and messaging to address that? What we saw with Kamala Harris, to her real detriment, is that they sort of expected the youth vote because younger voters tend to vote Democrat and put blinders on. They really didn't take the time or attention to really find out what were the real struggles and concerns of young voters. And it really was the economy. They're facing kind of a bleak future economically and not able to attain the things that their parents' and grandparents' generations were. But they decided to sort of forego that and instead of find out, really place abortion at the top of that list for those voters instead of asking them themselves.
Wow, well said. And I think you hit it right. It really was a political earthquake. I mean, that is the correct wording. Look, we know that the Harris-Walz campaign, they worked hard, okay, and no doubt they paid a lot to get celebrity power, but that really ended up being a rabbit trail that was totally non-effective and impactful for them. In fact, to me, a stunning study came out that said only 8% of Americans of young Americans, actually looked at celebrity endorsements in social media. 45% turned to their family, their friends. So was the Democrats, were they just totally disconnected on so many fronts?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Jody, if Taylor Swift's endorsement can't get it done for you, you're off track. I mean, and what we have found is that amongst all voters in our nation, we don't look to celebrities and pop stars to give us political guidance. We look to them for entertainment, and we look to others who are more connected to our day-to-day lives to guide us in this arena. So again, a really big L up on the scoreboard and a lot of millions of dollars wasted on people who already have a lot of money, like Oprah, Beyonce, Cardi B, who don't represent the values and the day-to-day struggles of the American voter. voters. So it kind of came across again as pretty condescending, knowing that all of this money was spent on these endorsements. And the people did not want to hear from those types of people who cannot relate to what they're going through. So again, complete disconnection there, and resulted in a really big loss for them.
Yeah, and when you say condescending, I think that's well said. The left they've been putting some of the blame on what they refer to as uneducated women. So you would be left to think that if you're a woman who did not vote for Kamala Harris, you must not be smart. So, I mean, how do you respond to that?
Well, Jody, I think a lot of mistakes were made by the Kamala Harris campaign, and that was one of them. Again, there was an expectation of a vote based on DEI and identity politics. Just because you're a woman, you were supposed to vote for Kamala Harris because she's a woman. Just because you're a person of color or a minority, you were supposed to hand over your vote to her. And what they were messaging, though, to the voters all across America, regardless of your educational background or your history or your status, was that they thought the American voter was stupid, and they are not. They're smart and wanted to make the decision for themselves and not have a campaign tell them what to do or expect a vote without their participation. It was shoved down everyone's throats. And from the very beginning, when Kamala Harris was installed as the nominee, that messaging was made from the get-go. And so I think right away, they could have recovered, but right away the American people thought, we're not going to just hand that over to you as always.
Thank you, Kyle Campbell, host of Politically Basic. Great insight. Thank you for joining us on Washington Watch.
Thanks, Jody. Always a pleasure.